Welcome back. Now, every year on the 17th of November, the world comes together to mark World Prematurity Day, a global awareness day dedicated to highlighting the challenges faced by babies born too soon and the importance of providing them with the care they need to survive and, of course, thrive. This year's theme, Give Preterm Babies a Strong Start for a Brighter Future, is a reminder that with the right care, every premature baby has a chance to live a healthy and fulfilling life. Joining me to unpack what this day means is Dr. Stefan Bau, a respected Namibian pediatrician who works closely with newborns and their families. Dr. Bau, good evening and welcome.
Good evening. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for being here. Well, to start with, just explain to us what exactly is World Prematurity Day and why such an important moment on the global health calendar.
Well, it was actually started by some European parent groups in 2008, and since then has evolved, and about 3 years later it became a global thing. So since 2011 we celebrate it once a year, and it's, as you say, it is literally to raise awareness for all the needs of premature babies, their families, the carers, because very often people like the sisters are very underappreciated, but they're a big part of the care of these little guys.
Yeah. Well, this year's theme, as I mentioned, is Give Preterm Babies a Strong Start for a Bright Future. That carries a very powerful message. But from your perspective and as a pediatrician, what does this mean in terms of, when we look at it practically?
The more premature a child gets born, so normal is 40 weeks essentially, plus minus, but we still consider normal at 36 weeks, just over 36 weeks. So from 36 weeks down, we consider prematurity. And depending on how premature it is, the more premature you are, the more challenges there are. So the smallest babies we treat are 24 weeks, and they are literally the size of a piece of butter. They are 500 grams roundabout, sometimes smaller, and they have very big challenges. They stay for months in hospital. They need special nutrition, etc. So it's a huge challenge to give those little babies the adequate care, and hence we struggle to sometimes have these care packages everywhere, because, for instance, in Namibia we are fairly centralized. There are a couple of centers outside, like Oshakati, Ongwediva, Walvis Bay and Swakopmund, maybe Rundu, and then that's where it stops. So, and if you're really in big trouble, then it's Windhoek. So the problem with all of this is that depending on where you give birth to somebody like that, you might already be at a very big disadvantage.
Right. When you say 36 weeks to 40 weeks is considered normal, is that for...
37 to 40. So end of 36 plus 6 days is premature, and you are 1 day older, your turn.
Does that also constitute for twin pregnancies?
Yes, although with twin pregnancies, very often twins are born earlier.
Yes.
As you know, when there are several siblings in the family, they always make trouble, and that's the same thing when you have the both of them in one womb.
Yeah. Well, globally, Dr. Bau, the statistics are that 1 out of 10 babies is born prematurely. How does Namibia compare to that figure?
Actually, the same. Like, we're also around about 1 in 10 is also premature. They are using a lot of resources, because these type of babies, in order to bring them through, you need to actually provide significantly more care than you need to do for an older child. That said, even term babies can get into serious troubles and need a lot of care, but the chances of that is significantly lower than if you have a prem baby. And so, around about 1 in 10, that is the same statistics as worldwide. So we compare very even.
Yeah. What are some of the most common causes of preterm births here?
The most common is probably preeclampsia or PET. So this is when due to the baby is actually a foreign organism. And if any foreign material comes in your body normally rejects it. The baby, however, in pregnancy can handle that and kind of fly under the radar with the mom. The only problem is that sometimes that doesn't work so well, and at some point mom's blood pressure gets sky high, and if that's not sufficient and still the body starts reacting more, mom starts getting liver failure and platelets are dropping, and this is an extremely high risk scenario for both mom and baby. You have other things where, for instance, suddenly the placenta detaches, and that's fairly often also due to blood pressure issues from the mom, but it can be other things as well. It can be trauma, it can be just out of nowhere where there's suddenly a bleeding, or you have, for instance, when the placenta, the actual baby's lung in the womb, is sitting too low, you can have a serious bleed, and then you might have to, you can't necessarily know if it's bleeding from baby or from mom, and if it's very severe, we'll have to intervene because either of both or both of them can die.
Right.
So these are some of the more common ones. There are a number of other reasons for preterm delivery, but these are probably the most common we see.
Well, with preeclampsia being the #1 contributing factor to having a premature birth, are pre-existing health conditions also contributing factors, and what could those possibly be?
Look, when you have pre-existing conditions, some of them, like if you have, let's say, immune diseases or something, they will impact on your pregnancy, and sometimes you have to intervene earlier. For instance, other things, if the mom has heart failure, pregnancy puts a huge demand on the heart of the mother, and so we've had mothers with very, very severe heart failure that were actually counseled not to fall pregnant because it's extreme high risk for both of them. But when it happens anyway, then these babies will usually be born via cesarean section in a controlled environment earlier, so that, because as the baby grows, the more the baby grows, the more demand is on the heart of the mother. So in which case we might have to intervene earlier as well. So some pre-existing conditions are important. Also, for instance, diabetes. We oftentimes see when the mom has very poorly controlled diabetes that the babies end up becoming very big, but then as soon as they get born and they don't get the sugar load from the mom, their blood pressures crash, and that's not great for your brain. So you then need to have artificially keep that blood pressure, that blood sugar high. And one other thing maybe also, pregnancy also sometimes unmasks things. So you didn't have a noticeable pre-existing condition, but particularly with diabetes-induced diabetes, pregnancy-induced diabetes, a lot of the ladies that have that in pregnancy, because of the higher demand, will get it later in life as well. So sometimes you only show that you're actually having something in pregnancy.
Well, we know when a baby is born prematurely, the first few hours or even the first few days are extremely critical. What kind of medical, care and support do premature babies typically need within Namibia's hospitals?
So that kind of depends on how young you are. There are even cut-off points for different hospitals, different places where we say, okay, we only do 28, for instance.
As
we
in
don't
the
do
age
20,
of the mother?
As in the week of the pregnancy.
Okay.
So, for instance, in private, we go down to 24 weeks, but it is very difficult to bring 24 weeks through. It's a special set of skills to do those tiny things, those tiny babies, because they're actually much more complicated than a 28-weeker, for instance. And there you will need significantly more help. So what we very often have, when we have a severe premature baby, we put in some lines in the belly button because that's easy access. This was the access that the baby had to the placenta. So we tend to use that one as well to give nutrients, to give food. As in like total parenteral nutrition for a while when you're very small, those type of things, or other fluids, other medications. Sometimes we need certain medications. We very often have to use protein that is derived from the lungs of either pigs or cows, and that is very similar to what we have in our lungs. And so we use that to open the lungs up. Because the lungs are kind of like, you know, those little party balloons that you're trying to blow up. And when you start, it's really, really hard to blow it up.
Yes.
And that's how our lungs are. They're tiny little vessels and they try to collapse. So you need a protein, which all of us adults are doing and all of us children are doing, which keeps the pressure low that they can open up. But a little baby of less than 34 weeks struggles with making this protein. If you've ever had premature labor, you or somebody who has premature labor, they usually get a shot of steroids in the muscle. And that is there to ripen the lungs of the baby. But even that sometimes is not enough, and then we need to use this artificial protein to open the lungs up. And since we have done this, we can go much lower with the babies. Before that, we would probably never bring a 24-weeker through because their lungs were just too stiff.
Is that also the reason, Dr. Bauer, why a lot of premature babies have lung issues growing up? Some of them grow out of it and some of them have it their lifelong.
Yeah, that kind of depends how young you were and so on. The problem is that this lung isn't actually meant to breathe yet. So it's still rudimentary. And so you're actually damaging it by putting pressurized air into the lung to a certain extent. So the younger you are, the more serious the damage can be. And severe damage would be called bronchopulmonary dysplasia, which can be for life. However, children are always fantastic. One of the reasons I'm a pediatrician, because children turn around from things that we adults don't. And until the age of 6, we make new lungs. So it's kind of like a tree that's been exposed to frost. So now those branches are dead, but the tree's not dead. So what will happen is in spring it starts shooting new branches. The old branches we forget at some point about because they're not useful, and then we have new branches where we make all our leaves, etc. And that's the same with the lung. As we grow older, the lung makes more alveoli, the lung makes better capacity to breathe, and that old damaged lung kind of falls by the wayside very often. So that's why they recover quite well, usually.
Well, yeah. Well, as we're coming up on the 17th of November, I also want to talk about, you know, the support system that should be there or can be put in place for, you know, a mom or a family that has experienced a premature birth within their family, because it's not easy. And as you mentioned in the beginning, sometimes these little babies spend a lot of time in hospital. To reach, you know, full term and to be able to go home. So what support can we render to moms, dads, family members who experience preemies in their family?
Well, preemies is a very stressful situation. So what oftentimes happens is that these parents feel like maybe depressed or something because everything takes so long. They can't hold their baby when it's really, really small, or they're scared because it's 500 grams, so we're not going to touch this. Fairly often when the baby is that small, the mothers actually go, yeah, I don't even know if this baby is going to make it. So, and they live with this uncertainty for a long time. So, which makes it a very emotional, difficult situation. So I think any emotional support, being there for them, is really helpful. Sometimes just simple things like, okay, I'm going to shopping anyway, I'll buy stuff for you, particularly once that baby is small. And one other thing that I think is quite important to mention is we have maternity leave for the mothers that give birth, which is usually 3 months. But when you have a baby that is born at 24 weeks, that baby will go home probably by about 3 months. So now your maternity leave is used up, but you are having a baby that is barely 3 kilos at home, that for other people would be a newborn baby. You haven't spent any time with this baby at home. You still have to get used to routines and stuff. And there it's quite useful for instance, employers to also see, well, how can we maybe give another month of leeway for the mom to get used to the baby, for the baby to get used to the mother, to the environment and stuff like that.
That's a valid point that you leave us with. Maternity leave is not enough as easy in any case. Dr. Ba, thank you so much for joining us this evening. It was lovely having you with us once again.
Thank you so much.
Well, that was Dr. Stefan Bau speaking to us there as we're coming up on World Prematurity Day on the 17th of November. It's almost the weekend, and we thought we'd leave you with some local sounds as we welcome this weekend. From myself and the team, it's good night. Thank you for joining us.